week on Motoring 90.
So anyway, we're driving along and we're going down a country road and look at this, there's some cows and...
It's something that a boyfriend-girlfriend can do together. It's something that a husband-wife can do together. And it's an enjoyable thing to do on a Sunday.
Motoring 90 is brought to you by Quaker State. The big Q stands for quality. Always has, always will.
Hello everybody and welcome to Motoring 90. Now if you're a regular viewer of the program, as I'm sure you are, you know that each week we are featuring many different models of cars, trucks and vans. But despite the wide variety, we're always looking for something, well, just a little unique, something you may never have seen before. Well, I think we got lucky this week because coming behind me is the latest in firefighting technology. Let me introduce to you Aerial Tower number 2. It's the latest in firefighting equipment, as I said, and later on we're going to check it out. But first, we're going to school. It's a school for young children, and as Sandra Neal discovered, these children are learning a lesson that could possibly save their lives.
Seatbelts are law in Canada for drivers and passengers of any age. But in Ontario, nearly 30% of the province's drivers and riders don't buckle up. Statistics from the Ministry of Transportation show that they are 26 times more likely to be killed in a collision than those who wear seatbelts.
This week we're at an elementary school in Metro Toronto. Why? Well, these kids are learning at an early age seatbelt safety. You know, we usually don't learn about buckling up until we get our driver's license. But today, thanks to Martha Gibson, times are changing.
Boys and girls, you're really fortunate this afternoon. You're going to get to meet a race car driver, Peter Lockhart. And on top of that, you're going to get to learn something really terrific. The use of seatbelts, why you use them, and how you wear them.
The response is the same wherever Martha Gibson teaches. A packed gymnasium filled with attentive listeners. Their speaker is on a mission to educate youngsters about wearing seatbelts. She says that parents don't set a good example, but hopes that after an hour-long presentation, these kids will.
I don't think that parents or people actually set out to not wear seatbelts. I think it's basically, because to me, if you don't buckle your child up, it's a form of abusing them. And that may be very strong wording, but it is. It's not necessarily done because they want to do this. It's a lack of knowledge, a lack of understanding. If you forget to brush your teeth, that's not a big problem. If you forget to buckle up your child and you are involved in an accident, then it can be very deadly.
If you don't wear a seatbelt, you fall.
That's true, yeah.
Mm-hmm. You might fall off, you might die.
Our children, I believe, are our best salespeople. And what I tell the kids is use that technique. You know, think back on how you convinced your mom and dad to buy that Christmas present or to buy that piece of gum and use it.
Boys and girls, Peter Lockhart.
Race car driver Peter Lockhart is the highlight of the presentation, and he's no stranger to collisions. Most recently, his car rolled in this year's Molson Indy Corvette Challenge, but he walked away without a scratch.
These cars are so strong, you know, they have roll cages in them and what have you, but you can still get hurt. And sitting with the belts on nice and tight, sitting upside down, rolling along there for a while, I had so much time, I slid for so long, I reached up and turned the key off. It reinforces that the cars are very safe and the belts work.
Everyone in this room, all the time, every single time, has always been wearing their seatbelt, right? Right! Every one of you, right?
The presentation is nearly completed, and if the message isn't already clear, Martha's daughter Monique will drill it home. She gets to play hooky for the occasion at her mom's request.
Seatbelt check. That's right, that's one way of doing it. Maybe you can use that when you go home. So anyway, we're driving along and we're going down a country road and look at this, there's some cows and... believe that seatbelts work. There's no way we would flip her on her head.
What was the most exciting part of the demonstration for you?
Or the time when the girl was sitting in the seat and they put it upside down and she still stayed. It was like magic.
What did you learn this afternoon at the demonstration?
About seatbelts and the way you're supposed to use them.
Do you wear seatbelts right now when you're in a car?
Yeah.
You want to pull the seatbelt?
Yeah.
Boy, isn't that something? Is that strong?
The excitement continues for the children when, after the demonstration, they get to visit with Peter Lockhart by his race car. And Martha Gibson hopes that these kids will take their seatbelt safety lesson back home to their parents, where in this case, the children become the teachers. Sandra Neal for Motoring 90.
When Motoring 90 returns, it's a car, it's a van, it's a Lumina. Test Drive with Graham Fletcher.
This week on Test Drive, we're looking at the 1990 Lumina APV. Now, not only is its appearance futuristic, but the use of composite materials. The body is all made of plastic. As I mentioned, the body panels are all made of fiberglass reinforced composite materials that are glued to a steel space frame. It takes no less than 1,600 inches of glue to hold the panels to the vehicle. Unfortunately, the amount of body creak and associated rattles is far more than I expected. This will be the first full-size minivan we've run through the pylons. So it'll be a real test of my metal and the car's suspension. For such a large vehicle, it's actually quite graceful running through here. I'm very surprised. It does lean a lot, but nonetheless it retains its composure. Very impressive. The Lumina is powered by a 3.1-litre V6 that provides good throttle response under most conditions. However, with a full complement of passengers on board, the performance becomes noticeably lazy. The fact that the aerodynamic focus of the Lumina is concentrated in one direction makes the vehicle susceptible to side winds. This is compounded by the very vague on-center feel offered by the steering, meaning the driver must constantly correct the vehicle in order to tack a straight line. The suspension is a lot less truck-like than the M vans that GM are currently using, but it still needs a lot of refining to catch Chrysler. The windshield is abnormally large, and so cleaning it, especially on the inside given the huge dash, will prove to be more than a little interesting. The engine layout is fairly good with all maintenance items at hand, but good luck to anybody adventurous enough to try and change the back three plugs. In terms of the amount of instrumentation available, the Lumina is fine. However, if you set the tilt steering to a good driving position, most of the information is hidden by the wheel itself. This demonstration leads me very nicely into my pet peeve. Now you'll see the cones disappear from view. Believe it or not, what you're looking at is the blind spot you're forced to live with when you drive this vehicle. And in everyday driving situations, it makes life more than a little awkward. Let's now go to the scoreboard and see how I rated the remainder of the 1990 Lumina APV. During our acceleration tests, we turned in times of around 11.2 seconds to reach 100k. Unladen, the performance is good. However, add a complement of passengers and the throttle response becomes decidedly lazy. Although the suspension offers average comfort, the numb feel does little to inspire confidence in its ability to handle any situation out of the ordinary. The whole setup needs to be reworked if it is to challenge the competition. During testing, the brakes turned in stopping distances of 120 feet. The pedal was easy to modulate and there were no nasty surprises. Generally, a well-balanced system. Our test van seemed to lack the rigidity needed to offer a quiet ride. There was more than the usual amount of body creak and several rattles emanated from behind the dash. The wind and engine noise levels were acceptable, however. We were able to average 25 miles per gallon during testing.
Given the size, performance and versatility, this figure is not bad at all. I found the Lumina a bit of a disappointment. Although it offers style, versatility and reasonable performance, it lacks the needed ingredients to be a serious threat in the minivan segment.
Well, we're back at the Fire Academy in Toronto, and as I mentioned earlier, we're trying something just a little different this week on Motoring 90, and we're introducing you to the latest firefighting apparatus here in Toronto, in fact, the latest in Canada. And with us is Lauren Whitaker. And Lauren, tell me a little bit about this apparatus. I know you're very proud of it.
Okay, this apparatus is a Mack MR series, 285 horsepower, 4-stroke diesel engine, turbocharged with an Allison automatic transmission. These trucks are driver-oriented. Everything is convenient for the driver, good visibility. We've been buying these Mack MR series since about 1983, and at the end of the next contract for apparatus, we will have 26 of these. This particular apparatus equipped is about $500,000.
Speed is not essential.
Speed is not essential at all, because it's pretty difficult to reach, say, 100 kilometers in downtown Toronto. But the main reason for the power on a pumper would be to get in and out of traffic as opposed to the speed.
This is an aerial truck. Are they improving as far as height goes?
This is an aerial tower. The advantage to this machine as opposed to a straight aerial ladder is that you can get up through the wires, rotate it, and come down the other side of the wire. Another unique feature with this is you can go up, over, and down the other side of a particular object. Or once the roof has gone in on a building, you can actually go over the building and drop down into the interior.
Where's the siren?
This is a siren right here, and we have 3 different tones on the siren. And then we have a manual siren plus the horn effect, or we have the air horns.
Well, as you can see, they put me to work here, but I'm not complaining. Little do they know I've been chasing fire trucks all my life. I'm having a ball. And speaking of a guy who has a ball at his job, we're now going to join our resident mechanic, Bill Gardiner. This week, he's going to talk about the battery. All the way up, Captain.
All domestic cars and 99% of all imports use a negative grounded system. First of all, you want to identify the terminals, and there's usually some stampings, a positive and negative sign, or POS or NEG written near the terminals. And it's very important that we start, when servicing a battery, by removing the negative cable first, and when we finish up, it's the last one that we connect. Reason being, when you're working on the positive post, if you inadvertently short it to ground while the negative's connected, you'll have a tremendous arc, possibly explode the battery, you'll burn your hands, etc. So we always remove the negative first and install it last when we're servicing a battery. It's important to keep these batteries clean and the terminals and their connections clean. Here's a handy tool that you can buy at an auto parts store that contains a little brush in this end for cleaning the post, and a brush in the other end under the cap for cleaning the terminal end. Another nifty little trick is this felt washer that you can buy at an auto parts store. There's one for the positive and a black one for the negative. They're impregnated with oil, and they just go on there before you make the connection, and they kind of keep that connection lubricated and free of any corrosion. Here's something we're all familiar with, jumper cables or battery booster cables, and you've probably used these before, but you may not have used them correctly. There's an important procedure for safety's sake here. We're going to hook up the battery cables to the good car, come over to the dead car and hook the positive up carefully to the positive terminal, keeping it away from shorting to ground. When we make our final connection, it's always the negative connection, and we're going to make that connection over at a good engine ground on the block, not at the battery, because when we make that final connection, there's going to be a pretty good arc or spark thrown there. We don't want to produce that spark around the battery. On top of the battery acid and trapped in the top here is hydrogen gas. It's very explosive, and every once in a while you'll make an arc there and get unlucky and explode that battery. So you want to make that connection, produce the spark away from the battery. You'll never explode a battery that way. Batteries have changed a lot over the last few years. They've become much more compact and powerful. Even though their size is being reduced, in many cases electrically, they're much stronger than the batteries they replaced many years ago. You can see the inner cell connectors here. You can see the little built-in hydrometer, which is quite important because you can no longer access individual cells with a hydrometer to remove fluid and test its specific gravity. So you have to rely on this little green dot here to show you the state of charge of the battery. Until next week, I'm Bill Gardiner for Motoring 90.
Still ahead on Motoring 90, parking lot prowess.
Well, we're back at the Fire Academy in Toronto, and the boys have asked me to go on a training run with them. Who knows, we just might see a little action. And speaking of action, we're now going to join Steve Grant, and he's discovered a new sport that is growing in popularity. All you need is a car and a parking lot. Come on, Dad, let's go. I'm coming.
I'd like to thank everybody for coming. There are a few things I'd like to tell you about now before we get running.
Solo Sport is grassroots racing with a capital G. Every week, car clubs from all over the country secure parking lots, position pylons, and it's off to the races. The object is to complete the course in the fastest time possible. It's just you against the clock.
I don't even know where the history of it started. I imagine it started with some poor frustrated person that wanted to work out his frustrations and decided a parking lot was a place to do it. Solo Sport was formed to give the competitors more opportunity to win more prizes, basically. It was formed by a bunch of guys out of the Burlington Club, and it has proved to be quite successful. We've had probably the best turnouts our club's ever seen with Solo Sport, and I think it'll grow even bigger next year.
If you want to become a race car driver or you just want to have fun behind the wheel of your car, Solo Sport is probably your best bet. All you need is a driver's license, a parking lot with some pylons, and anyone can drive. I mean, they're letting me drive this weekend. This 86 Ford Mustang with a 5-liter engine is what I'll be trying to drive. The owner is Peter Mills, and Peter, I've never driven in one of these before. Give me some tips.
You want to be smooth, you just want to squeeze the throttle. Because the car has so much power and so much torque, you can get really sideways in a hurry.
Oh, great. What's a good time on this course?
45 seconds would be quite fair today.
45 seconds? They'll be using a sundial with me.
707.
What's that?
Next up, the film crew.
Ready?
News at 11. Go for it.
Hang on, Dad, here we go. Jackie Stewart's never been like this before.
It's a great day for motor car racing.
I feel like I'm coming back from the supermarket.
It's a very accurate sport. It's not the speed that wins or loses a race here, it's the accuracy. And it's just that being on that sharp edge. And of course, the lure of motorsports, any kind of motorsports.
From Waterloo, Ontario, Peter Palmier in the 1972 MGB.
Peter, nestled in between all the RX-7s and the Camaros and the Firebirds, there's this car. Tell me about your car.
It's a University of Waterloo entry for a design competition sponsored by the Society of Automotive Engineers. This is the 1989 entry of the University of Waterloo, and I'm on the 1990 design team. Basically, you could say it's a go-kart, but it's a very serious go-kart. It has a Honda 600 Hurricane engine, fuel injected, and it produces 83 horsepower. The car weighs 510 pounds. The 0 to 60 time is in the range of 4.5 seconds with a projected top speed of around 120 miles an hour, although I wouldn't be willing to go quite that fast in it.
You know, these BMWs are a dime a dozen at an event like this. When I think of sports cars, the first thing that comes to mind is the 85 Mercury Marquis. You can't beat these babies.
Hey, it's the Marquis LTS, luxury touring sedan.
Excuse me. Ed, what are you doing with the Marquis? Does your father know the car's here?
Well, I spirited away from me. Didn't know I got it. It's a 5-liter HO Mustang engine and drivetrain suspension and a 4-door body.
I noticed you have cruise control in the steering wheel. I guess that comes in really handy.
Yeah, it works great on a fast course like this.
You don't need to have an expensive car. That's the beauty of the sport. The only thing you're really going to go through is tires. And they can be cheap as $50, $60 a piece, or as expensive as $2.50 a piece. So it's up to you what kind of tires you want to run. Of course, the guys that are competitive are running on the better tires.
David, I know tire pressure is important in this series, but what's with the chalk?
Well, you're right. Tire pressure is critical, especially in this series. What this does is it gives us a record of the tire abrasion, which gives us an idea of how far down the tire's rolling when he goes around a corner. And that allows us to adjust the air pressures as conditions change on the track.
So it's not going to make me go any faster then?
Oh, it may not make you go any faster mile an hour, but it'll cut seconds off your time if we get your tires balanced right.
I'm getting better. Started off really poorly the first couple of years, and it took me a little while, took the right car and everything. But it's fun, it's great. I'm not really competitive, but I do it mostly for just the fun.
It's better than letting the husband go and staying home alone.
Speaking of the husband, isn't this the husband's car? Why are you fixing it?
I don't know. Where is he? This is a place to play with your cars, right? It's safe, and then you're just normal on the highways.
Well, I think it's a dream of everybody's that's out here. Everybody wants to be a Mario Andretti or an Emerson Fittipaldi. Everybody sees that in them, but I think most of these people know that this is about it for them. It's all they can afford.
Kenzie's Corner with Jim Kenzie.
If there's one thing I hate more than a left lane bandit, it's the shoulder stealer. You know the guys I'm talking about. You're stuck in traffic, cars backed up forever, and some goofball takes to the shoulder and whips past everybody. He figures his timetable's so much more important than everybody else's. Shoulder stealing is not only the height of arrogance, but it's dumb and it's dangerous. Police, ambulance, and fire vehicles have to use the shoulder to get to the scene of an accident, and if their way is blocked, it could make the difference between life and death. The law is clear. Do not drive on paved shoulder. The police ticketed 150 of these jerks in one incident near Toronto recently. I say, go for it, fellas. Throw the book at the shoulder stealers. This is Jim Kenzie for Motoring 90.
Well, that's it for this special edition of Motoring 90, and we want to thank Chief Shanahan and the entire Toronto Fire Department for allowing us to give you a peek at the latest firefighting apparatus on 6 wheels. That's it for now. We got to run. We'll see you next week.
Motoring 90 is brought to you by Quaker State. The big Q stands for quality. Always has, always will.